Hey, it's Tyler. Welcome back to our Congressional Debate Basics series. Today, we are going over what is perhaps my favorite concept / topic of congressional debate, and that is rhetoric. Before we get started, if you like watching our videos and you want to work with more experienced coaches, debaters, and overall an environment that helps you win and succeed, go ahead and join Ascend Academy. Ascend Academy is a free online school year program. We host free events every single month by the best debaters, national champions, TOC champions, tournament winners, and the most decorated and experienced coaches that the event has to offer. Here they break down topics, they do speaking drills, office hours, prep hours, whatever you can think of, we have it, and it is 100% completely free. So go ahead, sign up. The link is going to be in the description, and I can't wait to see you there. All right, now on to the video. Rhetoric, intros, and conclusions are probably the biggest things that separate congressional debate from every other single debate event, and I love it. Why? It's because this is probably the part of our event that makes it actually real and it matters to people. See, look, I get it. Congressional debate can at times feel a little bit too role-play-y, too silly. But in the real world, you are going to need to convince people of things. You can't just shout facts or cases or research papers at them and expect them to get what you're talking about. That's where rhetoric comes in. It's words that really mean something to people, and it's persuading people in a manner that is both efficient and effective. Fancy names and fancy figures won't get you very far. You're gonna have to actually persuade your audience. So let's get right into it. The best way to define rhetoric is just persuasion with words. Not only are we trying to say an argument, but we're actually trying to tell a story with our argument as well. And the way we do that is by doing all the things that your English teacher has probably taught you already. Vivid imagery, descriptive details, or simply just telling the audience what the world looks like after the legislation has been enacted. Remember, legislation is all about change. We need to then describe that change and really describe how those changes affect people's lives every single day. Like most writing, the most difficult step is probably that first step. And a lot of hesitancy to write rhetoric comes from the fact that people are comparing their speech to great orators, politicians, comedians, preachers, singers, and all of these amazing trained people of influence. And yes, as good as they may be individually, you're never going to be able to replicate what they do on your first try, or even your 100th try. See, looking for the perfect line to start your speech, or just the perfect line to begin with, is the worst way to find the perfect line. It's never gonna come to you. You just gotta start by putting pen to paper or cursor to Google Doc and just get started on the writing. And that start should be simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. One thing that I think makes great rhetoric is if you simply just summarize the block in a sentence or two and push your advocacy forward. That's really all rhetoric is to it. Give me a way to simplify the evidence and the warrant in one sentence or two sentences that, hey, I understand that a lot clearly now, and then push that advocacy forward by either focusing on the people that are affected or focusing on the change that is enacted based on what we're talking about. We're going to go ahead and use this case of universal pre-K as an example, and then go block by block, and I'll show you how rhetoric was built up throughout this case. We'll get into a lot more grander themes or overarching ideas of things you can use in final rounds or more advanced levels of competition in a little bit of a later video. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and start with this prerequisite block here, and I'm gonna create moments throughout the video where you can pause and honestly just take the time to come up with your own line, and then I'll show you the one that I had as well. Again, my line doesn't have to necessarily be the right one, but it's just the one that I felt was most appropriate for the moment or encapsulated the great idea in a very convincing way. Yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So, we're looking at a prerequisite right here, and it says, the affirmation says test scores increase, the negation says they don't. I don't think that test scores are the only factor that determine learning. Preschools teach other important values. Secondly, this legislation is an option. Even if you don't think that preschool is good for your kid, then your kid doesn't have to go. As the US News and World Report writes in December 2nd of 2022, only 19 states require kids to attend preschool before they turn 6. In all the other states, it is an option. Go ahead and pause the video right here and try and think of a line that you would want to come up with that is rhetoric that encapsulates some of the ideas that I've talked about. All right, now that you've gone and done that, this is what I had written down. Maybe it isn't good for everyone, but for some kids, for some families, it matters a lot. See, what I'm doing is I'm not trying to be super grandiose with my rhetoric or my wording. I'm simply just trying to put the numbers and data into easy to understand perspective. I'm bringing up the people, the stakeholders that are most affected by the debate and the topic that we're talking about today. I'm cluing the audience in pretty early on in my speech that this is who I want to focus on, and these are the people that we should care about the most. And I'm doing that with just one sentence here. Again, simple, doesn't have to be too complicated. Let's go ahead and get into the status quo. Simply put, families need somewhere to send their children. As Rashid Malik writes for the Center of American Progress on June 20th of 2019, childcare expenses amount to 35% of low-income families' earnings, whether it be paying for daycare, preschool, or a babysitter. Again, here's an example of a block, very simple, one-line tagline right here, again, following the format, and then all we need to do is have one card. We don't need warranting before it because, again, the status quo should be pretty objective. It should be objectively, what is it that people or families in this matter are going through right now? Again, take a pause right here, think of something, and then I'm going to go through and show you the full block with the rhetoric that I had in. Simply put, families need somewhere to send their children. As Rashid Malik writes for the Center of American Progress on June 20th of 2019, childcare expenses amount to 35% of low-income families' earnings, whether it be paying for daycare, preschool, or a babysitter. Now, back in the good old days, kids raised themselves. But now, families need someone to look after their children. But doing so takes up more money than they can afford to spend. Okay, here I'm throwing in a little bit of a sarcastic remark, hitting them with that old, back in my day, kids did this, this, and this. Old head, boomer humor, they would get that kind of thing. But remember, it's keeping the audience engaged and it has a purpose to it. I'm trying to call attention to the fact that it really is expensive for low-income families, especially to pay for childcare or just to raise their children. And I'm pointing out that that is a problem that we have to be addressed. Again, in my line where I'm saying, but now families need someone to look after their children, but doing so takes up more money than they can afford to spend. It's being very straightforward, very simple, and very straight to the point. I'm making sure to tie all of this back to the fact that childcare is expensive. And honestly, that's all I have to say. It's one line, it's one sentence. And like I said, I'm summarizing the block and I'm moving on. All right, we're gonna go ahead and move on to the action/outcome block. Feel free to take a pause after I say great benefits in their cognitive abilities. That's sort of the end of the warranting evidence, sort of more argument analytical part of it. If you, again, want to make up your own rhetoric line or test how you would do at it, before I reveal my own, go ahead and pause right there because I'm not going to create the same sort of pause section. So yeah, let's get right into it. Passing this legislation allows for children to be taken care of at no expense to the parents. This legislation mandates pre-K, allowing for free childcare to be provided by school districts. Not only is there now a free form of childcare provided, but there are also benefits given to children as well. Marianne Bitler, professor at UC Davis Center for Poverty and Inequality Research, writes in December 20th of 2017, pre-K significantly boosted the social and emotional activeness for low-income children that attended and led to greater benefits in their cognitive abilities. It's obviously very hard for a 4-year-old to understand that 2 plus 2 equals 4. What has long-term benefits are the social skills that they gain along the way. Understanding friendship, sympathy, and teamwork. Those are the skills that children can only get by interacting with other children. And those skills matter in every aspect of life. Having a positive start in early childhood means that children are more likely to view school as a positive thing, not just somewhere to kill 6 hours. Going forward in life, they're able to excel and accept school, leading them to achieve more in higher education. The trajectory of their lives can be transformed when we invest in them from day one. Again, a lot more wording this time, a lot more rhetoric, so to speak. But the takeaway here is be easy with it. Be simple. Stop overthinking and just write. Are these lines perfect? No, honestly. A lot of them just depends on me performing with a certain energy or coming into round with enthusiasm, something that every one of you should be striving for as well. And of course, these lines can be made better as well. But at the very least, it's writing that gets you started. Looking at the lines that I have here, again, throwing in a little bit of a funny line. Not every child remembers that 2 plus 2 equals 4, but they do learn sympathy, teamwork, empathy, and just learning to work with other kids is incredibly important for their social development, which helps their cognitive development as well. And that's something that really cuts through the debate, because if the affirmation is saying, preschool increases test scores, negation says they don't, this is something that's aside from test scores. And I'm simply just describing that with words here. Again, it's summary. And then I go on to say, having a positive start in early childhood means that kids are more likely to like school. I mean, I know that if I went to school early, had friends, yeah, I'd probably like school a lot more than if it was just all about like test scores, testing, and all these things like that. So again, doesn't have to be anything grand, doesn't have to be anything crazy. All you have to do is think, how can I summarize my evidence and warranting into something that is more visual? How do I turn all this evidence and warranting into a world that I can build and then describe to my judges? Yeah. Again, that's all there is to it. We're going to go ahead and skip the impact here, because that one kind of tends to be a little bit easier on students to understand / a little bit straightforward. But now we're going to go and talk about intros and conclusions. Honestly speaking, I actually do find it a lot harder to come up with intros and conclusions as opposed to rhetoric within the block, because you're going from summarization to actual creation. But here's a few tips that I have for you. 1, do your prep and argument first before doing your introduction. 2, don't start with the first line of your introduction, start with identifying theme. And 3rd, identify what interests you about the debate the most, and that should be your start. Here's what all of that means. 1, I never suggest that you start your prep process or your speech writing process with your introduction, because in all honesty, it does take a while. Creative thinking is a process that takes a little bit longer than, say, doing research and writing your status quo, your outcome, your impact. Do your prep. Start with the status quo, start with the meat and the substance before sprinkling on some seasoning, if you know what I mean, or like decoration, decor, whatever you want to call it. 2nd, it helps writing your intro by identifying the theme of your argument or the theme of your speech. This is something you've already done before when you write essays. It's kind of like your thesis statement. Your argument should honestly have one as well. Every argument that you give has a theme. I mean, Let's take, for example, in national finals, my speech against carbon capture technology. My argument was that we tried carbon capture technology before, it kind of sucked, so it's unreliable, and passing would basically raise energy rates and keep us on an unreliable system. In my intro, this was relayed as the theme of this legislation does too much and hurts too many. That's why we must negate. And that's how you should approach an intro, in my opinion. Don't start with the first or second sentence. Start with this second to last or the last sentence and identify what is it that the theme of your argument is or should be. Summarize your entire argument down to 1 or 2 sentences by simply saying, this legislation does X, Y, and Z. That's why I want to pass this legislation, or that's why I want to fail this legislation, or this entire legislation is a blah, 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 or this entire debate comes down to blah, 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 blah. That's why I pass this legislation. That's why I fail this legislation. It's easier to identify the theme of an argument, what is your argument in 1 sentence or 2 sentences, then move on from there. And 3rd and lastly, identify what interests you most about this topic or what interests you most about this debate. And that honestly really helps you kind of add the finesse on top of your rhetoric. Like when we're talking about, should we go for a very patriotic intro? Should we go for a funny intro? Should we go for a conversational intro, serious, personal anecdote? I always say identify what interests you most about the topic, because we're all interested in different things at the end of the day. And because we're all interested in different things and identify with different things, that also changes the way that we write or speak about a topic. For example, I might have found like a really funny story when I was researching this legislation, and now I want to write a little bit of a joke about it. Or maybe I watched an interview of, a family or a mom that was talking, and I was really moved by their story, and now I want to make my intro based around their anecdote or their story. Whatever it is that interests you about the topic, identify that one thing and then make an intro based off of that. And that'll help you along the way. And I truly believe that if you write or talk about what interests you the most, that's how you get your best performance, and that's how you get your best writing, because you're actually writing about something that matters to you. And again, it matters so much because we're all different people and we will all identify different things. We could feel more patriotic about a topic. We could feel more humorous. We could feel more serious. We can feel a bunch of different things. But getting started starts with, what is it that I would like to talk about the most? Or what is it that I believe needs the most highlighting? And then going from there. Not all topics are as serious as others, and not all topics will move you the same way others do. So change up your intros accordingly and try your best not to recycle intros, even if it is the same topic. If it's the same bill, like, a little bit of leeway, and I say a little bit of leeway, but again, try and make it very unique or find some kind of connection to that. It'll help you so much, and trust me, it'll come off in your performances in a very genuine and easy to understand manner, and judges will love it. And in my opinion, it goes without saying that your conclusion should tie back to your intro. Again, it should tie back to that theme or the thesis that you identified your argument as, and then it should tie back to the other sort of stakeholders that you discussed. Now, all of this should be enough to get you started on just the writing process of it. And like I talked about before, don't overthink and don't go digging for the perfect line, because you're not going to find the perfect line sitting there and doing nothing. The perfect line is something that is sort of built over time as you write something out, then take some away and just chisel and work at your craft. And remember, the best thing to do starting off is focus on quantity, not quality. Put a bunch of work out there, test a bunch of things, experiment with style, experiment with your voice, experiment with what you're interested in debate and what you're talking about, and then begin to work your way from there and then identify what you're going for. I always say that debate should be treated like a funnel. You should start very broad and very wide with your approach to things, and slowly over time, with more experience and more rounds, you'll begin to narrow down what is your strength, what is your focus, and then go on and go from there. Thank you again for watching this video. It has been an absolute joy and pleasure to get you started on an introduction to rhetoric, intros, and conclusions. We will have more later videos that are more intermediate or advanced in their breakdown of introductions, conclusions, and other forms of rhetoric and other techniques that you can use. And yes, we will have more examples as well. But again, if you like this video, please subscribe and share this with your friends. It helps this channel so much. And again, in your comments, I love hearing your support. I love hearing that you want more videos, but I am also taking suggestions as well. So if you have some suggestions, if you have videos that you want to see, or if you want more examples that you want me to break into, whether it be a round analysis, a round breakdown, or a particular speech breakdown or a topic breakdown, go ahead and leave that advice in the comments. It helps me out so much, and I will make sure to get to that. So again, thank you so much for joining me today. We will be discussing the basics and intros of strong performance and speaking next time, and I hope you all have an amazing day, and I can't wait to see you next time. I've been Tyler, this is Congressional Debate Basics, and can't wait to see you in the next video, right? Bye-bye.